What is the strongest type of Pokemon? What are different Pokemon types weak to and good against? This is the subject of today's video. What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another video in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, although this video does apply to all the other games as we are talking about Pokemon types. This video is part of a series on understanding the basics of Pokemon and building the ultimate Pokemon, and eventually even the ultimate team for competitive and just in general gameplay. It kind of coincides with a lot of our raid builds and other tips and tricks for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and games that come out in the future. So we're going to go ahead and look at these different Pokemon types and kind of cover their weaknesses, their strengths, figure out which are the most powerful, which are the weakest, which ones are the glass cannons, and which ones really just aren't that useful. If you guys are new to the channel, consider subscribing, as I do upload several videos a week, and we are trying to grow the channel to 600 subs and beyond. And if you guys do find the video informative, do consider leaving a like. The more likes this video gets, the more I'm encouraged to continue this series and the more people this reaches, especially looking for people who need help with understanding the Pokemon types. Obviously there's a chart that you can look up, but I'm going to give you guys some fun little analogies and comparisons so you can kind of understand how these type weaknesses and advantages work on a different level. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into the Pokemon types and look at them. We're going to go ahead and switch over to PowerPoint. All right, and here we are looking at a nice little type chart. Obviously, that is quite a bit of a confusing mess and lots of information there. So we're going to break it down on a more simple basis. So we're going to be starting with normal Pokemon. So here we are looking at Arceus, right? It is the quintessential normal type Pokemon. Of course, it can change its typings using its different plates. But looking here at resistances, so normal type Pokemon are immune to Ghost. That is their only resistance. They are weak to fighting type Pokemon, and they don't have any strengths. They do hit most types for at least neutral damage, so just normal damage, but there's nothing that they really do well against. So it's kind of your normal, a little bit of vanilla ice cream, I guess you could call it. I mean, good, but nothing special. Moving on, we've got fire type Pokemon. So fire type Pokemon are pretty common offensive type. So they are resistant to grass, ice, bug, steel, and fairy. They are weak to water. Obviously, water puts out fire. They're weak to ground because obviously dirt can kind of put out a fire, and then rock because very, very similar. Fire type Pokemon are strong against grass, ice, bug, and steel. Obviously, you know, a forest fire kind of burns through everything. Ice gets melted. I guess we use them also to kind of kill bugs and anthills and stuff like that. And then you've got steel. Obviously, kind of fire is used for the shaping and the molding of steel, so that makes absolute sense there. Next up, we've got water type Pokemon who resist fire, obviously, also resist themselves and ice and steel. As far as weaknesses, they are weak to grass, as grass does absorb moisture as part of one of its processes for growing and maintaining the environment. Also weak to electric because obviously water conducts electricity. They are strong against fire because obviously ground because water does erode the ground around it, and then obviously you have rock because rocks are just basically smaller chunks of ground. Next up, we've got grass type Pokemon, which are resistant to water themselves, electric, and ground. Big weaknesses here are fire, obviously. We mentioned that in the fire section. Ice, because ice can basically damage and destroy plants, as you have like an ice age or a freeze. Poison, think about that as pesticides, stuff like that that get into the plants and damage them. And then bugs, obviously, because bugs can do a lot of damages. They sometimes eat different plants, and they can mess with that ecosystem, let's put it that way. Next up, we've got strengths. So it is great against water type Pokemon, as grass does absorb water. It's great against ground, as plants grow through the ground and basically don't let anything get in its way when it's growing, at least ground wise, or anything and outside of anything human made. And then rocks works similar to ground. You'll notice that rock has some of basically every single weakness that ground does except for one. Moving on to electric. So electric resists electric. It also resists flying and steel. Its only weakness is ground, so that's a nice thing that it only has one weakness. However, it is only really strong against water and flying. So obviously water conducts electricity, that explains that. And then imagine being something up in the air, you're kind of vulnerable to lightning strikes. as you have nothing to ground yourself with. Next up, we've got Ice. So Ice is only resistant to Ice. This is why Ice is one of those very weaker Pokemon types. They're good offensively to a degree, but they only have one resistance, that being itself, which makes it a little harder for it. It is weak to fire, as fire melts ice. Weak to fighting, as you can imagine, like sheer force, breaking some ice. Rocks, as rocks fall from the sky, they'll damage ice. And then steel, as we use picks to break through ice. As far as its strength, it is great against grass. Obviously, we mentioned that in the grass section. Ground, as well as flying and dragon. So flying, imagine like flying through a hailstorm. And then dragons, I mean, this was the original offensive type against dragons. It was the only thing that could check dragons, and it's one of dragons' only weaknesses. Next up, we've got fighting. So this is a really good offensive type. It has resistance to bug, rock, and dark. It is weak to flying, as imagine trying to fight something that's above you and can take advantage and attack you. It's weak to psychic. I look at this as kind of like a mind over matter, right? If you use words or thoughts or expressions over just sheer force, I guess you could put it that way. And then fairy, that one's just kind of there to check fighting a little bit more, as it is kind of an offensive type. So I don't know, I guess fairies don't like fighting because they're supposed to be all good and pure. I don't know how you want to put it that way, but hey, let me know down below which of these kind of comparisons you guys like the most, or even give me some of your own ideas. So fighting is great against normal type Pokemon. It is normal type Pokemon's only weakness. It's also great against ice. As we mentioned, ice is weak to fighting. It is great against rock, dark, and steel. The steel one's kind of funny because just imagine somebody trying to break steel with their fists. Dark is easy. Look at that as like, good versus evil. So imagine fighting being the good and then dark kind of being the bad. Obviously good is supposed to prevail there. Ice and rock are pretty self-explanatory. Next up, we've got poison. So poison's got quite a few resistances. It is resistant to grass, fighting itself in poison, bug, and fairy. Poison is weak to ground. I guess you could imagine that ground kind of neutralizes poisons. There's also weak to psychic. That one I don't really have a comparison there for, or an analogy. As far as strength for poison, it is good against grass, which makes sense, and then good against fairy. It's kind of a check to fairies because fairies are pretty strong, but the poison, imagine that kind of getting into the purity and creating impurities and damaging it from within. Next up, we've got ground type Pokemon, which are resistant to electric, but they take no damage from electric. Resistant to poison and rock. Obviously rock is just parts of ground basically, and poison is not really going to do much to the earth. As far as weaknesses, it is weak to water, as water erodes it. Grass can kind of grow rampant, and ice, as things like, for example, glaciers and stuff like that can basically erode the land. It is strong against fire type Pokemon, as dust and ground can be used to put out fires. Electric, as grounds electricity. Pretty simple there. Poison, I guess just because it can dissipate it and basically ignore it. Not really much of a analogy there. Rock, because rock is just basically smaller chunks of ground. And steel, just imagine an earthquake. Obviously earthquakes can basically destroy cities that are made of concrete and steel. Next up, we've got flying, which resists grass, fighting, and bug. Pretty simple there. Weaknesses to electric. Obviously, if you're flying around in the air, you're more susceptible to getting a lightning strike as you're not grounded. Weak to ice, getting hit by a hailstorm. And then rock, because you can throw a rock at something that's up in the air and basically knock it down. It is strong against grass type Pokemon. Let's think, imagine birds that feed on like plants and grass, and then fighting. Obviously, you have an aerial advantage over a grounded target. And bugs, as birds do eat a lot of bugs. So that one is pretty self-explanatory there. Moving on to Psychic, which is resistant to fighting and other psychic type Pokemon. It is weak to bug, which I don't understand. But I guess that's just a weakness that it needs to have. No real analogy there. It is weak to ghost and dark. Psychic is also strong against fighting, kind of that mind over matter that I mentioned earlier, and poison, because I don't really know why. These are some of the ones that you can forget as you're going through playing the games. You're like, wait, what is this weak to? Next up, we've got bugs, which are resistant to grass, fighting, and ground. They are weak to fire. It's a great way to kill bugs. Flying, as birds do kind of feed on bugs. And then rock, because, you know, smash bug. They are strong against grass, psychic, and dark. Grass, obviously, because the bugs can kind of mess around with the grass and damage it or eat it or break it down or use it for whatever they want to use it for. Psychic, I guess, again, we mentioned that in the last Pokemon type. And then dark, kind of just a check for dark, as dark doesn't have too many checks. Next up, we've got rock, which is the only type outside of ghost that resists normal. It also resists fire, poison, and flying. It is weak to water, as water would erode it. It is weak to grass, as grass can kind of grow through it. Weak to fighting, because big man punch things. It is weak to ground, because basically just smaller chunks of ground, and kind of ground forms the rocks. And then it is weak to steel, because we can break them apart with some steel picks or something like that. It is good against fire, obviously it puts out fire. Good against ice, because you can break ice. Great against flying, as imagine throwing a rock at something that's flying. And bug, because bug gets squished by rock. Next up, we've got ghost, which is immune to fighting, also immune to normal, and resists poison and bug. Obviously a fighting type move can't hit something that's not physically tangible there, neither can something normal. And then poison and bug are just kind of there as resistances. It is, however, weak to itself, as well as dark. It's a great way to take down a ghost type Pokemon is with another ghost type Pokemon, but you want to be safe and probably just go with a dark type Pokemon. It is strong against ghost type Pokemon and psychic type Pokemon. Next up, we've got Dragon. So Dragon is a fun one. It's got plenty of nice little resistances here. So it resists fire, water, and grass. So fire and water are pretty common. And then grass is a little less common because of some weaknesses. It's also resistant to electric. It is weak to ice, as I guess that just needs to be a check on dragons. It is also weak to itself and weak to fairy. Because think of like fairy kind of being pure, and you know, dragons can, in some considerations, in some conditions, be considered evil or foul creatures. So think about it that way. They are only good against other dragons. So that's one of the things about dragons is they hit very, very hard. They've got a really, really cool move set. They've got a wide range of typing, but they do have the fairy weakness, the ice weakness. Ice is very common as an offensive type. Obviously dragons are common as offensive types, and then fairy are quite a bit prevalent. So dragons got kind of put down a little bit more in their place. They're still very powerful, still very useful, but not as big anymore. Next up, we've got dark, which is immune to psychic. It is resistant to ghost and dark. It is weak to fighting, as kind of good versus evil. Weak to bug because reasons. Before generation 6, it only had these two weaknesses, which made dark Pokemon pretty good. And then also weak to fairy. As far as strengths go, it is strong against ghost type Pokemon and psychic type Pokemon. So great against psychic type Pokemon, as it is immune to their moves. And then ghost, because ghosts can really only hurt ghosts. So you can basically slap them around with a dark type Pokemon. Next up, we've got Steel, and Steel is one of the better types of Pokemon, definitely as far as defensive goes. Look at this massive list of resistances here. We have normal, grass, ice, immune to poison, because I mean, how are you gonna poison Steel? Flying, psychic, bug, rock, steel, and fairy. That is the most resistances for a Pokemon type. It is, however, weak to fire, fighting, and ground, which are all very common offensive typings and very common in, say, competitive, those kinds of moves. So fire, obviously, kind of being there to melt the steel. Fighting, you know, something big and strong, just kind of breaking it. And then ground, obviously, being the earthquake stuff there. Steel is great against ices. That's how you kind of break apart ice. Rock, as you can basically crush rocks with some steel. And fairy. It is one of fairy's only weaknesses and is basically there to keep fairies in check. And finally, we have the newest Pokemon type. I mean, newer, because it's been around since Gen 6, so it's definitely like, what, 7-8 years now. Anyways, it is resistant to fighting, resistant to bug, it is immune to dragon, and resistant to dark. So a lot of those resistances there are pretty self-explanatory. Does have a weakness to poison, as it could kind of break into the purity that is a fairy, and steel because fairy needed a check. Otherwise, I don't see how steel is any really special thing against fairy. It is strong against fighting type moves, As you would say, fairies maybe don't want to fight, and you know, fighting is like a sign of aggression, and fairies are supposed to be like a sign of purity. Dragon, because again, dragons needed to check, and dark because they needed to check, and I guess, you know, pure versus dark. So running really quick through these types one more time. Normal is just kind of plain Jane. It's not good against anything, but it's not harmed by a lot of things. Fire is great for dealing with grass and bug type Pokemon, and very offensive typing, pretty common in the meta. Water is a little less common, but is good for different types such as fire and ground. Grass is a little bit of an offensive type, but does have a few weaknesses there. Electric is nothing really special, almost like a normal type Pokemon there, with only really having 2 coverages. Ice is very offensive, but not defensive in any way, shape, or form, so think of it as a glass cannon. Fighting is super offensive, doesn't have too many weaknesses, and hits a lot of targets. Poison is basically there to take care of fairies, because that's really its only big thing. Ground is decently offensive, decently resistant, nothing special. Flying is basically like electric. Psychic is a little closer to normal, not too much that it covers there. Similar things with Bug. Rock is a great offensive type, but very weak as well, so another glass cannon. Ghost is all right. Dragons have lots of resistances, but a couple weaknesses and no real strengths. They're good kind of tanky Pokemon as long as you have your opponent isn't using one of its weaknesses, such as fairies and other dragons or ice. Darks are okay, nothing really too bad there. You don't see a lot of ghosts, so they do have that going for them. Steel is the most defensive type, not the most defensive, but super defensive. And fairy is a great way to deal with pesky fighting and dark type Pokemon. With all that being said, I want to thank you guys for coming and watching the video. I hope you liked it. If you did, consider subscribing and leaving a like. Consider also joining our Discord server, as we have plenty of like-minded Pokemon fans in there that like to play the games together, make trades, help each other out with shinies, and all sorts of other fun stuff like that. And if you want to support me on a more personal level, consider becoming a Patreon and getting featured at the end of videos, along with anyone who is a subscriber on Twitch. Thanks for coming by, and I'll see you in the next video or our next live stream. Take it easy.